Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some incredibly cool battles as this trainer has powered up a perfect IV Shadow Dialga to test it out in the Master League. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, GXCXB, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, while Dialga Origin is still going to be preferred in the Master League over the Shadow Dialga, the extra attack on the Shadow Dialga can lead to some pretty fun games as its damage output can be truly ridiculous. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's take a look at Shadow Hundo Dialga in the Master League. Hopping into the first match, pick up a nice lead, Landorus into a Ho-Oh, opponent safe switches into a Dragon Tail Groudon. There's not really a clear response to a Dragon Tail Groudon save switch, so Landorus is going to apply some chip damage and a debuff with the Sandsear Storm, and now in comes Dawnwing's Necrozma. Dawnwing's Necrozma, now that Yveltal is a lot less common due to all of these Ice Dragons, Dawnwings honestly feels very flexible in this Master League meta across the board. Dark Pulse is going to be able to pick up the knockout, and back in comes Ho-Oh. But Dawnwings is always so incredibly threatening with the Moongeist Beam, and we do see a bait here, hoping to try and grab the shield from the Ho-Oh, getting the shield from the Ho-Oh, and now it is Moongeist Beam time. The opponent already shielded once, protecting the Ho-Oh. They're gonna shield twice. Ho-Oh now at 100 energy. They're committing to the farm down. They get the farm down, so they exit with 100 energy loaded, and that means, unfortunately, this Landorus is getting KO'd. There's just no point in shielding, as Ho-Oh could get to a second move before Landorus got to its first, so it's all up to Shadow Dialga. Opponent stays in despite their debuff defense to fire off a Sacred Fire. Oh, it's actually an Earthquake, and now we're going to see Kyurem in the back. And Kyurem is just going to be absolutely deleted with a Shadow Iron Head. Down goes Kyurem, back in comes Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh hoping to get to a move, but it's going to get Dragon Breath down, and that's going to be a Game 1 win for Shadow Dialga. Moving into game number 2, Landorus staring down a Ho-Oh lead once again, but this Ho-Oh is actually choosing to stay in the matchup. Landorus no baits here, going straight for the Stone Edge, looking to try and punish a no shield by the opponent. Opponent is going to invest an early shield. They now have enough for the Sacred Fire, and now Landorus has to decide, is this worth shielding? Landorus shields, Ho-Oh goes for the Brave Bird, they're going to pivot out into Xerneas, going to bank a move for later and send out Dawnwings. Dawnwings does a great job into Xerneas, as Moonblast is not a particularly threatening attack, but the Moongeist Beam will absolutely delete Xerneas from the field of play. No baits here, full set of the Moongeist, it's gonna land and down goes Xerneas. Opponent brings in their final Pokemon, which is Dialga. Dialga looking for a farm down, but it's not gonna get there. The Moongeist Beam is reached. Dialga has to shield, because if they don't, they're getting absolutely rocked. Dialga barely hanging on. In comes the Shadow Dialga. Opponent gonna bring back in the Ho-Oh. A quick switch to Landorus. Landorus is going for the Sandsear Storm bait here, hoping for the shield. Opponent calls the bait as they're way back in the game, and now things could get a little bit tricky. This Ho-Oh on Earthquake as well, 3100 elo facing back-to-back Earthquake Ho-Ohs. Look at the Dragon Breath from the Shadow Dialga, fully farming down that Ho-Oh, and that's going to be a win as well. We move to game number 3. Landorus is going to be looking at a Zygarde, and that is a really tough lead for this team. Zygarde has a dominating matchup here against Landorus, and you can't really afford to switch in the Dawnwings because of the Zygarde's running Crunch. Double super effective Crunch would be very bad news there as well. Landorus farming up quite a bit. Zygarde, are they going to go for an Outrage here? What moveset are they running? It is going to be the Outrage, and unfortunately, even at -1, that still does big damage to the Glassy Landorus. Landorus firing off another Sandsear Storm, but it looks like it's just going to get farmed down here. A third Sandsear is reached, but this still does not pressure a shield from the Zygarde. Zygarde gets a full farm down, exiting at -3, but with quite a lot of energy loaded. And now we are going to see Shadow Dialga hit the field. Opponent is going to pivot out into a Duskmane Necrozma, and this opponent's team so far is so strong into the Dawnwings. Dawnwings really going to struggle in this matchup, as unfortunately it can't really ever get switched into the non-stop Dark Pulse spam from this Duskmane, as Duskmane will go for the Outrage, and it also really cannot afford to get stuck against that Zygarde. So we are going to see a shield. Oh, it's actually an Iron Head Outrage on the Duskmane here. So they're not running Dark Pulse, but still Shadow Claws would add up quite significantly. Iron Head is going to land. There's a simultaneous switch. Opponent has Dialga Origin in the back. And unfortunately, there's just not going to be a way to win this game now. Dialga is going to fire off the Iron Head. Iron Head is going to set up a farm down. We will see very close to the back-to-back Dark Pulses here for the Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings is going to go for the Dark Pulse. Opponent is going to let that through because they know they can just win this game. They don't need the Dialga whatsoever. Dark Pulse is going to pick up the knockout. They can send back into Crozma. In comes Dialga, and there's the combo play with the Zygarde. Zygarde lead proved to be a really tough one for this team, and Outrage is able to take the win for the opponent. We move to the next match. Landorus staring down opposing Dawn Wings. So this matchup will be a very, very tricky one for the Landorus. Landorus obviously has a big pacing advantage, but the Dawn Wings, this is a very safe no-shield on the Sandsear Storm, whereas a Moongeist Beam will apply an incredible amount of pressure. Nice overfarm by the opponent. Landorus now with a tough decision to make. Landorus shields, gets the shield call right, and now Landorus will look to overfarm itself before picking up the knockout with Sandsear Storm number 2. This Sandsear Storm is going to be shielded, and I feel like this is where you would want to just let the Landorus go, because you've gotten the opponent into a range where you can farm them down, and now convert this lost lead into an energy advantage. Opponent going to pivot into Primarina, but Primarina will not appreciate Shadow Ironhead. Ironhead normally not a particularly threatening move to Primarina, but this is the Shadow Dialga, able to grab a shield, and now we are going to see a quick pivot into the Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings not going to be too threatened here by any one move, but you have to shield something, so we will see the shield, and now Dawn Wings can look to fire off the resisted Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse, of course, going to still be able to pick up the knockout after one additional Shadow Claw. In the back is Palkia, and Palkia is going to get absolutely shredded here by this Moongeist Beam. Moongeist is going to land. Opponent switches in their Dawn Wings. Now they're met with the Shadow Dialga. After a bit of a hiccup in the last game, this team thankfully immediately able to return to its winning ways. That's a big surprise on the lead in the next match as Landorus is staring down and Annihilate. Annihilate, not a Pokemon I was expecting to see in the Master League, but I guess with Ice Punch, even though Ice Punch is about to be debuffed by one stage, it's still double super effective damage, so Landorus would lose a lot of HP. Landorus is going to no-shield, and they're not running Ice Punch. It is just a Rage Fist from the Annihilate, and now we will see a Charge Attack priority tie here as Landorus is going to be firing off the Sandsear. Sandsear is going to land. Opponent is barely able to hang on, and now Landorus with a decision to make, going to let it go. It is just going to be the Rage Fist, getting the farm down and winning the zero shield scenario. In comes Primarina. It's a Charm Primarina, and Charm Primarina does not do well into the Landorus. Landorus able to make a Sandsear Storm, applying a debuff, and now in comes Dawn Wings. Opponent going to send out Rhyperior as they look to reset that debuff, and I think the goal here is just to try and get chip damage onto the Rhyperior to hopefully Dragon Breath it down later on. But Rhyperior has no intentions of letting that happen, as they will use their first shield. The shield comes up from the Dawn Wings. It's a Breaking Swipe bait. Thankfully, we do not see an attack drop, but still, that continually just helps Rhyperior gain more and more of an advantage here. The double shield from the Rhyperior. If you're Dawn Wings, you just have to let this go, hoping the opponent will go for the Breaking Swipe. They do go for the Breaking Swipe, and now there's a switch to Shadow Dialga, but Shadow Dialga is going to be taking so much damage from these Mud Slaps. It's another Breaking Swipe. This one will actually apply the debuff, and Rhyperior is just running away with this game. Shadow Dialga getting absolutely melted. Opponent is going to pivot into Primarina, and Primarina will quickly be met with the Iron Head. Iron Head into the Primarina is going to land. It will not be enough to knock out. Primarina gets KO'd. It's a simul KO. In comes the Dawn Wings, and Dawn Wings gets to the Dark Pulse. Things looked dire there, but the opponent pivoting out of the Rhyperior opened the door to a win. And this game actually is going to end in victory. And I believe that is a 4-1 set. And this battler climbs now up to 3205 elo. We move to battle number 1 of set 2, and it's a very nice lead for the Landorus leading into Florges. Florges can outpace with a Trailblaze, but Trailblaze's boost will immediately be undone with the Sandsear, so instead they're just going to look to farm up. Sandsear is going to land, they bank the Moonblast, in comes Shadow Claw here on black, and that's going to be answered with the Shadow Dialga, and these Dragon Breaths are doing so much damage. Dialga is going to shield. We do see the Fusion Bolt bait. Opponent going to try and make it to the nuke, and they don't get there. That's only another Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt is going to land, and Shadow Dialga is going to get a full farm down. Shadow Dialga exiting with energy, going to be met with the Palkia, not baiting, going straight for the Draco Meteor. Draco Meteor is going to be shielded, and now we're going to see an aggressive pivot into the Dawn Wings. Opponent going to stay in here with the Palkia. Spatial Rend will not be enough to knock out from here. It will do quite a lot of damage. We do see a shield. It's an Aqua Tail bait, and there's going to be a combo play from the Florges. Florges now firing off the Moonblast. That is unfortunately going to do a ton of damage, and now this is not a range where Dark Pulse will knock out, so the Moongeist Beam is going to come out to pick up the KO. In comes Palkia. Palkia going to be chipped now with a Dark Pulse. Does the opponent decide to burn the last shield here? They say yes. In comes the Landorus. Landorus, this is super effective damage, but the Landorus is too healthy. It's going to withstand that Aqua Tail, and Landorus is barely going to hang on and get to the Sandsear Storm. This is nice neutral damage onto the Palkia. Palkia is going to get knocked out. Things got a little bit scary there in the end game, but luckily still able to end with a win. Landorus into Kyurem White. This is a very, very bad lead if it's Ice Fang, and it is. We see the pivot now into the Dawn Wings, and the opponent is going to respond with Dialga. Dialga is by no means a good response to a Dawn Wing safe switch. We're going to see a Dark Pulse bait, and that is going to grab a shield from the opponent. Opponent will have to fire off the Iron Head here right before the Moongeist Beam. Very nice overfarm by the opponent, but Dawn Wings is looking to try and make a play here. Dawn Wings committing the shield, not baiting this time though, going straight for the Moongeist. Opponent now with the decision to make. They are going to go for a double shield. We are going to see a last second Dark Pulse reach. So it was a true 50-50 there on whether you double bait or whether you end up full sending. The opponent is going to exit very low health and get sniped down by Dragon Breath from Shadow Dialga. In comes Rhyperior. Look at the mud slaps. This poor Dialga getting absolutely melted. Dialga is going to no-shield the breaking swipe. Dialga makes the Iron Head. Iron Head will be able to just knock out the Rhyperior, as this is going to be a Shadow Iron Head. And now we see the switch into the Landorus. Landorus needs to get to a move. It's only going to get to the Sandsear Storm, as Sandsear Storm is not going to be enough. I think it had to try and get to the Stone Edge, but it was just never getting there, and Shadow Dialga is unfortunately going to get Ice Fang farmed down. Hopping into the next match, Landorus looking at Ho-Oh, a great lead for the Landorus. The opponent is going to look to stay in this matchup to start with, and Landorus will immediately grab the first shield of the match with the Stone Edge, as it's just so risky to try and call a bait here. The opponent will end up committing that shield. They're going to farm up to their Sacred Fire, and we will see the shield from the Landorus. The last two Ho-Ohs we saw were actually Earthquake Ho-Ohs. This trainer throws a Brave Bird as well. So is this another Earthquake Ho-Oh? I'm very surprised. I guess people just want the coverage into Rhyperior, and that's why they're running it. But my goodness, I guess I haven't played Master League in a bit. This current iteration of the Master League meta has not been my most favorite, so I've been more inclined to play the other leagues. Out comes Florges, and oh no, Florges is not going to be happy at Shadow Ironhead. Normally, Ironhead is something that Florges can survive. It's a bit of an uncomfortable farm down for the Dialga, but Shadow Ironhead, I think the Florges is just gone. Here's the Ironhead. There's the Florges. Okay, it does barely survive, but that set up a really nice farm down there for the Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings now up a shield, up 3 Shadow Claws, looking in prime position to sweep. In comes the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh will be able to grab a shield here. Is this finally going to be the Sacred Fire? Yes, it is. So they had Sacred Fire the whole time. They just didn't throw it. In the back is going to be Kyurem. I didn't get to see which one switched in. I just saw the name. But either way, Moongeist Beam is going to do big damage. Unfortunately, due to that debuff from the Sacred Fire, it was not enough to knock out. So we'll need a Dark Pulse as well and a snipe from the Shadow Dialga. In comes Ho-Oh. Can the Ho-Oh get the farm down? No, it cannot. Shadow Dialga making the difference and securing that win. We move to game number 4 of set 2, and what a lead. Landorus staring down Rhyperior. Opponent is going to pivot into Ho-Oh, and they are so weak to Landorus. But I guess they're just trying to employ an overload strategy of saying, even if I have to switch in the Ho-Oh, if I end up double shielding, I can use the Incinerates to get the opponent very low. Ho-Oh now at 100 energy. This is going to be the Sacred Fire coming out from the Ho-Oh. They're going to go for that Sacred Fire. We do not see a debuff this time, and we will immediately see another Stone Edge. Stone Edge into the Ho-Oh is going to be double shielded. Ho-Oh knows they can leave this matchup so healthy, but Landorus going to match shields and try and make life difficult. There's going to be the Brave Bird. There's now a switch out by the opponent. They send in the Rhyperior, so the Ho-Oh is still very, very healthy. Rhyperior is going to take some pretty significant damage. I like staying in here with the Landorus just to force the opponent to throw energy, and then you can potentially try and go for a farm down with one of the back Mons. In comes Shadow Dialga. Shadow Dialga, these Dragon Breaths adding up quite a bit. Opponent is going to fire off the Breaking Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe will do a solid chunk of damage, no debuff, and Dialga is going to get the farm down. In comes Palkia, opponent trying to take advantage of the lack of bulk and get a farm down, but they're not going to get there. The Draco Meteor is reached. Down goes Palkia. In comes Dawn Wings, and Dawn Wings is going to have to live a move from Ho-Oh. But for Dawn Wings, that isn't a problem. It has amazing stats, so Ho-Oh will fire off the Sacred Fire. Dawn Wings hangs on, gets the Moongeist Beam. And I know this is a Shadow Dialga showcase, but I continue to be impressed by how well Dawn Wings is performing in these battles. Dawn Wings just looks unbelievable in this meta. Hopping into the final match, and it's one final Ho-Oh lead for the Landorus. Ho-Oh going to be staying in as before, and Landorus looks like this trainer is really risk-averse in this matchup, looking to try and lock down shields or damage with the Stone Edge, rather than trying to fish for baits that could potentially reduce Incinerate damage. Opponent opts for the cheaper Brave Bird. They save switch into Florges, which is a crazy Pokemon to save switch. But I guess if you see a Landorus lead, you know there can't be a Ho-Oh behind it, because then that team would be ABA weak to Palkia. There could still be a Duskmane behind it, and that would be absolutely disastrous, but they take a calculated risk, and that risk ends up paying off. Whereas now we're going to have Dawn Wings against Florges in the mid game. Dawn Wings not going to bait, just going for the knockout. Opponent is going to let that through. Florges will get KO'd. They can send back in the Ho-Oh here, as Ho-Oh, no, they're actually not going to. They're going to bring out a Dragon Breath Kyurem White. Kyurem White looking for a full farm down, but before they do, the Moongeist Beam is reached. Moongeist Beam is going to connect. Opponent does not respect it. Tried to snipe with the Shadow Dialga, and Shadow Dialga is going to be answered with the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh going for the Sacred Fire. Will we see the attack drop there? We do not see the attack drop, and these Dragon Breaths are just deleting Ho-Oh. My goodness. Ho-Oh is going to be hit with the Iron Head. That's going to force the final shield, and Shadow Dialga has more than done its job. It forced energy from the Ho-Oh, and now in comes Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings will get some valuable Shadow Claw damage. Landorus gets the Mud Shot down, and all that's left on the opponent is just 1 HP on that Kyurem White. They needed to get an Ice Burn to have a chance to win, and they were not able to get there. All in all, getting a Shadow Legendary that is a hundo, not from a raid, but just from a Giovanni encounter, has to be an incredibly rare occurrence. So big congratulations to this trainer. And I do admire the dedication of saying, you know what, if I got this rare Legendary, I may as well power it up and test it out. I do think that this probably outperforms the standard Dialga by just a little bit. Dialga Origin, I do think, is still a step up from the OG Shadow Dialga, but I do think that the Shadow Dialga, specifically with its ability to farm down the Kyurems a little bit cleaner, I think can potentially have some niche play, especially with trainers who really like playing draft formats and other kinds of community run things. But as far as the Go Battle League goes, I would still say Dialga Origin is going to reign supreme, just because Roar of Time is Draco Meteor without any drawbacks, and that's a huge starting point. But the Dragon Breath damage in some of those matches ended up proving to be extremely clutch. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.